Hello again. This video is sponsored by Ubisoft, who've asked me to check out Anno 117 Pax Romana. As a historic fan of the Anno series, I'm more than happy to oblige. And when I say historic, I'm talking about my disturbingly advanced age. The second game in the series, 1503, was one of the first games I owned. Anyway, we've come a long way since then. Let me show you. In 117, you can choose to either start in the balmy, sun-soaked islands of Latium, a more standard, friendly experience, with plenty of building space and azure blue seas. Or alternatively, you can take to the rainy, marshy, mountainous and disturbingly British Isles of Albion. And that's where we'll be starting. Governor Old Man Jenkins is settling in the land betwixt mine thighs. Get it? Because it's swampy. Never mind. We're starting in the usual manner, by harvesting some wood and processing it in sawmills into useful building material. Material that we'll use to build some houses for the most basic of Albionic folk, waders. The kind of people who choose between cockles or eels for dinner. So, eels. You get them in the marshes, harvested by eel grabbers. What a job title. We'll get back to that in a moment, but of course when we arrived here I sent my flagship out exploring, as you do in these games. So now we've met Athir Logwyn, who introduces himself very humbly,
come to swear, fealty stranger,
and asks us to gaze upon his City of Legend. Yeah, that looks about right for Britain, to be honest. I've been to Wales before. Back in our own City of Legend. With the waders fed, it's time to entertain them, with a market and a bardic hearth. You only strictly need to provide one of each type of need in order to promote your residents to the next tier, but fulfilling a need, how quickly is the word need going to become meaningless, usually also provides some bonus. For example, when supplied with eels, a residence will generate one extra income and population, whereas cockles grant happiness and population. So by having extra needs fulfilled, you'll get more population stuffed into a smaller space, and they'll make more money and be happier. Basically, you get the point. You fulfill more needs, your people do more good. I think. I should preface this entire video with a disclaimer that despite having played every Anno title, I've never been particularly good at them. But let's not worry about that for now. With food and entertainment sorted, last but not least for the waders is fashion. Fashion unlocked! Now we'll have to sacrifice some of our valuable eel grabbing space for growing reeds to make into shoes. But first though, here's Voada, the local raider. She doesn't like Rome, and even though Old Man Jenkins doesn't look it, he's technically a Roman governor. So we're going to end up fighting, basically. Hell, we're doing it right now. But let's not, and instead get back to utilizing the marshes, planting a load of reeds to turn into shoes. Also, my exploration of the map continues. We've run into Manx, a free trader, who buys and sells a select few goods. He will buy them in infinite quantities though. I'm not sure whether his requests change periodically or are fixed, but maybe we'll find out later. I also meet my two other rivals here. Zara to my immediate northeast, who appears to be desperate for timber, and then there's the farmer boy to our east. Now that we've met the neighbours, back home we're making an important decision. Do we try and Romanize the locals or let Celts be Celts? I chose to just be super Celtic in this save because it kind of just suits me better. I'll take muddy people doing muddy things over the types of folk that like garum any day. I've watched Max Miller, that stuff's foul. Anyway, the second tier of Celts are smiths, and they want cheese and beer. See, these are my people. I'm starting work on a nice new group of residences to expand my wader population, because that's always the rub in Anno. As you start to reach new tiers of folk, you're eating into your population of lower tier workers. My usual solution to this is to build multiple, somewhat separated chunks of housing. We can just call it what it is. I build slums. But to be fair, as far as they go, this slum is quite quaint. With slums on the mind, I figured I should probably think about healthcare by building a Medici. I think it would have been nice if there were slightly more Albionic variants of the emergency service buildings, to be honest. A healer's hut would have fit much nicer here. But anyway, I need tiles to build it. and I can't make the... Oh, never mind, yes I can. It turns out I just needed a few more smiths to unlock that production chain. Over in Latium, you make tiles by extracting clay from river slots, whereas over here we can just pull up some mud from the marshes and dry it in the, well, I was going to say in the sun, but this is Albion, so I guess we dry it in the wind. So with absolutely zero fire safety measures taken, aside from the fact that it's always raining, let's start making charcoal and firing some tiles. This process takes a long time, so I built out the industry quite substantially. After spending a little more time further expanding the population of the land betwixt mine thighs, and getting started on the research tree, having built my smiths their equivalent of a library, I think it's time to expand our reach to new lands. There's a lovely little swamp right here next to the Imperial trading post, which I discovered ages ago by the way, but I was distracted by something else, so I never actually looked at it. The important point is that they'll buy anything you have to sell them in infinite quantities. At a discounted rate, of course. My plan then was to settle the swamp next door and just flog the Empire thousands and thousands of eels. Probably not really a viable endeavour from an economic standpoint, but undeniably funny. Just showing up at a Roman port 3 times a day and dumping literal tons of stinking, slimy eels on their docks. It'll cost us about 5,000 to settle the island, so rather conveniently then we've just been given a sturdy gift of 10 grand by Ather. So there we go. We can start to build our little eel land. Back home, some waders have turned green. This is normal, it's a Celtic thing. Ignore it, they'll be fine. Look at my new and shiny shipyard instead. Farmer Boy is looking, and in fact, he's straight up giving me cash for having built it. Very nice. I'll use some of that to build a ship later, but first I need to make ropes and sails. Now, having reached a certain city status, and for being very Celtic, we can research a new deity. That's a slightly odd thing to say, but that's how it works here. We have to research the cult of Cernunnos, a Celtic deity focused on basically all things Albionic. I think he's rad. But we'll get to that in a bit. I haven't talked about all of the worship stuff here yet, because none of the Roman deities feel super useful to an Albion start, but once we've researched the buff guy with a snake, I'll talk about it some more. Instead, I'm poking around the map whilst waiting for a ship to build, when I find the actual, real eel land. My goodness, look at all of that marshland, just waiting to be grabbed. It's at this point that I remember I can actually just set goods to be sold from my own ports. I don't have to ferry it all around myself. And so I set anything that I'm overproducing to be sold. That ought to help out the cash flow a little. The other thing that'll probably not actually help out my cash flow is running my constant trade route of eels back and forth to the Empire. Again, I'm pretty sure if I did the math, the upkeep of the boat and the grabbers would probably be more than the revenue from the sales, but I'm doing it anyway. Let's talk about specialists now. I'm struggling to have enough workforce back here in my capital, so I built a big fancy villa up on the hill and started to surround it with residences, because at some point, you see, I got to choose between 2 specialists, and one of the options was this guy, Brutus, who increases the workforce provided by residents in a radius by 20%. He can be placed in either my villa or in an officium, like this one down here. Could it be positioned more optimally? Yes, but that's alright. It helps increase my wader workforce by just a little bit. I think that really the wise thing to do is to offshore some of your more basic industry to secondary islands and then ship in the goods, saving you building space on your capital island. So let's settle that giant marshy island and grab its eels then. It costs us about 20,000 to settle, but we've done it. Eel land is ours, and after waiting for some timber to build up, construction can begin. I always love starting work on a new island. That's probably why my usual playstyle with Anno games is to restart roughly once every 2 hours. But doing this for a video has forced me to stick with it, and I'm glad. Gaze upon my vast imperial city. Hey, it's their words, not mine. I'd call it a muddy Welsh town, personally, but I suppose by roughly 2 millennia ago standards, maybe this fits. Voada would like to get her hands on some of my vastness, and not in a fun way. She's demanding a tribute of 10,000, and on the one hand I can afford it, and I haven't really got any defensive power whatsoever, but on the other I'm quite tight-fisted, so I tell her to walk and then immediately start building watchtowers and barracks. And then the game nerd-checked me because I'd been playing for 2 hours straight, so I went rock climbing. When I came back though, after a little more building, we've unlocked the eel god, Cernunnos. So now we can piss off the Emperor by forsaking Mars in his favour.
Filius Canis, you blockhead.
Until we've built up some belief, this doesn't actually do anything for us, but soon it will get real good, you'll see. In the meantime, I'm starting to pump out some boats, both cargo ships and military vessels. Partly because I'm about to dismantle most of the timber industry here on the land betwixt mine thighs, making space for more residences. Therefore I'll need those cargo ships to ship in the wood that I won't be making here anymore. I'm essentially slowly connecting my currently separate patches of housing. Basically, Birmingham is eating Solihull and Cov is up next. Art imitates life, I guess. Anyway, Cernunnos! By worshipping his snake hard enough, every residence in the land betwixt mine thighs will produce 2 additional health and knowledge. That's a huge bonus. Currently it's just at 1, but we'll reach the 2nd level bonus quite soon. I also unlocked the Snake Man's Shrine, which would grant a further health buff to nearby buildings, but it requires concrete to build and I don't know how to make that stuff. It's a Roman thing. So, okay, fine. We're pretty healthy here anyway, so it's not a big deal. It is time now to move towards the 3rd tier of residence, though, for which we'll need some drinking horns, for which we'll need some tin. And I did just settle a new island which has tin in the hills, but I could also just buy some for now. Immediately upon settling my tin land, by the way, Farmer Boy offered me a trade treaty, which I'll accept. You can of course conquer your rivals by force in Anno games, but I'm a lover, not a fighter, so I tend to make friends instead. With peaceful times ahead and the blessings of Cernunnos, we can absolutely blast through all of the early researches that I've skipped over so far. Some of them are literally taking less than a minute. So after someone finally drops some tin off at our port and our hornmaker does their job, we've leveled 1 singular smith's residence up to tier 3, Alderman. And with them, we unlock Latium. You know, that lovely place that you're normally supposed to start off in. The other thing we unlock with this progress is the ability to have both Celtic and Romanized residences in Albion at the same time. In fact, for a lot of research progress later, we need to have both. So we'll get to that in a bit, but for now I'm going to accidentally leave the game unpaused on 2 times speed for 5 minutes whilst I go and deal with some important business in real life. When I returned, I see that a fire has started and the people are rioting. See, this is why they need a ruler. Anarchy, the moment I'm gone. Never mind, let's ignore that and have a look at Latium. It's kind of a rest for the eyeballs, after staring at the foggy rain for so long. The Emperor just gives us a boat over here and sends us off to build in his name. So whilst said boat is exploring for a good island to settle on, let's get back to putting down civil unrest in Albion. Naturally, after being betrayed by my supposedly happy populace like this, I now want to squeeze them completely dry of tax revenue. So I'm doing some quick and dirty wader expansion across the whole region. For a lot of the industries you settle new islands for, like tin mining for example, you actually need smiths' residences to work those mines. So it would be wise to have some excess cash flow to spend on shipping in the required goods to keep tier 2 and 3 workers happy on your satellite islands. And with all of those new fresh-faced waders working away at filling my coffers, it's back to Latium, where we've been exploring the edges of the map, but realistically we want to settle one of these much larger and more open central islands. This one should do. So now, after setting up some timber production, we can get to work on being Romans, which for now means fishing up sardines and making porridge, apparently. And also apparently helping out Diana, the Emperor's representative. She says she'll give me lots of money to rescue her friend from a boring arranged marriage. And I'll get around to that, but first I have to devote our first Latin settlement to a Celtic god, just to really piss in the Emperor's cornflakes, and then get to some serious city building. I'm trying my very best not to simply build a grid here. It's also at this point that I decided, having built a few warships back in Albion, to go and see what all the fuss is about at Scathatch's port. It looks like to take her out for good you'd have to make some kind of land assault, but it seems I can also just destroy her coastal buildings. Unfortunately, she does have a catapult or two, and they do rather hurt when they hit a boat. So, alright, message received, we're off. Back in Latium, I decided to build my villa right at the heart of the town, and even decorated it with some statues, before realizing I was building it on a hilarious jaunty angle. Well, at least we'll get some big meaty calves going back and forth between the bedroom and the bathroom in the middle of the night. I realise now that my tax collection efforts have been working rather well, and I'm sat on over 100 grand. So I buy a few ships from the free traders here in Latium since I can't make my own yet. And, yeah, for some reason my recording got really crunchy for a moment here, so forgive the slideshow. It doesn't last long, I promise. Perhaps it was just my computer sympathising with my brain, because at this point I'm jumping back and forth between Albion and Latium, where I'm managing different quests in both. Like, right now, for some reason the Emperor needs me to deliver him 87 tons of soap. I don't know what he's up to over there, but I'm not paid to ask questions, I just get a hold of the soap and drop it off at one of his ports. Anyway, my point was that my mental bandwidth is getting spread thin, like garum, scraped over too much toast. For completing one of Diana's quests, not the Emperor's soapy one, I'm given a ship captain, the first one I've had so far. When on board a ship, they improve its trade prices and reduce the penalty of holding cargo on its speed. That's very nice. Anyway, like I said, I'm doing a lot of things right now. We're settling a second island on Latium, helping Diana with her friend's marital situation, and blasting through research. And it's whilst doing that I realise that I need to Romanize some folk back in Albion, because that part of the research tree is where the biggest of the ships is hidden. The Quinquireme. The Quinquireme. The Quinquireme. The Quinquireme, however you say it. So then, Mercators. We need to house 500 of them, and they eat bread and sausages. They also want some Roman entertainment, and of course the more of those needs that I fulfill, the less actual households I'll need to build to reach that 500 population mark. And since I can't really sacrifice the waiter workforce on TLBMT, yes, I've said it enough now that I need an acronym, instead the Romanized lot are getting their own separate island. It's Eelland. Somewhat paradoxically, that's where I'll house my quote-unquote more civilized folk. The whole time I've been working on other stuff, I've also been doing this long string of marital quests for Diana, sinking ships and rescuing her friends from the wreckage. Anyway, we're done and she's just dropped 50k on me. Damn, girl. Alright, we get it, you're rich. From continuing to advance my level of devotion to Cernunnos, which is to say from having more global belief dedicated to him across many islands, we've unlocked a new and incredibly powerful bonus. Arboreal Rhizome. Forest production buildings now produce all other forest products once every third cycle. That seems insanely strong to me. Granted, there aren't that many forest products, but basically it means that my woodcutters produce charcoal and resin alongside their wood. For the most part, it just means I'll be selling a load of extra resin and charcoal because I don't have much use for those resources on every single of my islands, but still, this whole religion thing seems to really be paying off for us. Unfortunately then, from here on in, I get rather consumed by hatred. Because the raider guy in Latium, Queso con Salsa, just sunk one of my boats. Took me completely by surprise. So, step 1, a trireme dipped in revenge. And step 2, a whole load more of that. I chased around a good few of his boats down here, and clearly that made Farmer Boy like me a lot, because he's offered me a defensive pact which I'll happily accept because he's my homie. Chasing those boats around down here has also revealed the Queso Jar itself. A rather well-defended looking port indeed, but if I keep up my raider sinking spree, I'll unlock a new chunk of the research tree which includes some new and shiny shipborne weapons. Having tasted blood, I now want to take the fight directly to his nasty little home. And for the same reason, at this moment I get back to Albion, where I need to push the Mercator population just a bit higher to unlock the Quinquireme. Can I show you my Quinquireme? And it really does seem like I'll need the Quinquireme, given how my first attempt on Queso's port went. With my gang of triremes, we're able to take on singular defensive positions in the mouth of the jar without too much issue, but when we try to push further in, it's inevitable that some Queso is going to get onto my knuckles. Am I pushing this bit too far? Whatever, you get my point. It's incredibly well defended here. Once you actually get into it, you're facing so much incoming fire at once that I can't see my current navy being anywhere near capable of handling it. Luckily then, we've just unlocked the ability to build catapults directly onto our triremes. Siege boats. Very good. Let's set a few of those to be built, and go back to Albion to try and desperately squeeze yet more Romanized folk onto Eel land. Eventually, finally we manage it. So now we can research the biggest of the boats. In the meantime, let's test the siege triremes. I've got 9 boats here and 2 of them are catapult enabled. And initially things look pretty good. As we're scooting around the outer defences, picking them off one by one, here you can see a demonstration of the catapult's range, off the bow of the ship right there. They fire very slowly and they're not super accurate, but they do hit very hard and they can outrange some of the smaller defensive emplacements. But as ever, the problems start when we try to advance inwards, at which point multiple positions can open fire on us and also our ships get all bunched together, which makes them really good targets for catapults. A problem indeed. And it's only once I push in even further that I see the true extent of things. My goodness, that's a lot of defences. Okay, Queso, you're a pretty tough cookie, but I'll be back with bigger boats. Cut to when we've built bigger boats. 4 quinquiremes, armed mostly with scorpions, but also sporting 1 or 2 catapults. Let's go and see how they do. I went with the scorpions because honestly the catapults just seem incompatible with the tight openings of the Queso jar, whereas the scorpions fire more quickly and also broadside. On this attack I was trying not to have my ships bunch up and get annihilated by catapults, but that did kind of still happen. But still, with the increased health pool of the quinquireme, progress was a little bit better, but still not very good. I did also then spend some time attempting to clear some emplacements from afar with the catapults, but to no real success. Because, as I mentioned, you are eventually forced into quite close quarters. Basically what I'm saying is I don't think I can manage to take on this port, and it might, just maybe, be because I'm bad at video games. Or maybe it's simply impossible. I'll leave that to someone like Potato or Spiff to figure out. Meanwhile, I'll be dwelling in the nice wet land betwixt my thighs, enjoying a nice succulent eel. So if you need me, that's where I'll be. Thanks again to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video and letting me play the game early. If you want to pick it up yourself, you can do so now by using my link in the description below. It's available on PC, PS5 and Xbox Series S and X, whatever that means. But whatever you do, please remain indoors. It's not safe outside. The seas are filled with chunky queso con salsa, and it's starting to turn rancid. Until next time, thanks for watching, and goodbye.